There is an old, honest rule in the amplifier world, repeated on every gear form for decades. An amplifier can be loud, light, or cheap, and you only ever get to pick two. The moment you understand that one sentence, half the amps on the market reveal themselves as compromises dressed up as bargains. Today, the 7 bass amps and amp categories you should never buy, why each one breaks that rule and breaks it on you specifically, and then, because this channel never leaves you empty-handed, the 3 amps that actually deliver, with names and street prices. And in the middle, the free 30-second math that explains the single most misunderstood number in this entire hobby, watts. Here is the plan. Traps 1 through 3 live in the beginner bundle world, the guitar amp in disguise, the mega combo with everything except the thing that matters, and the wattage-chasing trap that sends beginners broke for nothing. Traps 4 and 5 are for players who think they have outgrown beginner mistakes and have not. The tube amp mystique and the separate head and cabinet trap bought before anyone needed it. Traps 6 and 7 live on the used and bundle market, where this channel spends half its life. Then the watts math, then the 3 gems, then the 3 questions. Stay with me for the watts segment especially, because it will save you more money than any single trap in this video, and it is the one piece of math almost no beginner is ever taught before they buy. And keep an ear open for gem number 1, the amp so many independent reviewers keep landing on that this channel almost feels boring recommending it, and that is exactly the point. A quick, honest note before we start. Nobody paid for this video, no brand, no shop, and every clip from other creators you are about to see is used muted for commentary with the channel credited on screen. The links below are plain product links, no affiliate games. And because buying right is a method, not a list, the complete buyer's guide, every goldmine and money trap from this channel as one honest map is linked in the description. Now let's get into it. Trap number 1, the guitar amp in disguise. An 8-inch speaker, a tiny plastic cabinet, a price under $60, sold with the word bass printed somewhere on the box. Here is the honest physics. Low frequencies need real cone area to move real air, and an 8-inch speaker simply does not have it, no matter how the amplifier behind it is voiced. The result, universally reported by every beginner who has owned one. It sounds fine alone in a bedroom, and disappears the instant a second musician, even an unplugged one, is in the room. The forum consensus on this is blunt and consistent. Do not go smaller than a 10-inch speaker, and do not go under about 40 watts for a beginner practice amp that has any hope of surviving contact with another human being. The honest question, will this amp ever be in a room with a drummer, even once? If the answer is anything but a confident no, the 8-inch box was never actually an option. Trap number 2, the mega combo, 40 effects, Bluetooth streaming, a phone charger port, a light show, and, buried underneath all of it, the same undersized speaker from Trap 1. This is the exact same camouflage trick this channel has documented on bundle basses and bundle pedal boards. Stack enough features on the spec sheet and nobody reads the one line that actually determines the sound, the speaker size, and the power rating. The honest question, if you stripped every bullet point except speaker size and watts, would you still buy it? If the feature list is doing all the convincing, the feature list is the product, and the amp underneath it is an afterthought. Trap number 3, the one that costs the most money for the least reason, wattage chasing. A beginner, told correctly that small amps are quiet, overcorrects and buys the biggest watt number on the shelf, assuming the relationship between watts and volume is a straight line. It is not, and this is worth its own segment later in this video, because the honest math here is the single most valuable thing you will learn today. For now, the short version. Doubling your wattage does not double your volume, and chasing bigger numbers past a certain point spends real money on headroom you will rarely use as a beginner. Money that would have bought a genuinely better small amp instead. The honest question, do you know what you are actually buying when you pay for more watts? Most players honestly do not, and the next generation of amp marketing counts on that. Trap number 4, for players who think they have graduated past beginner mistakes, the tube amp mystique. Guitar culture has spent 70 years romanticizing tube amps, warm, glowing, vintage, and some bass players import that romance uncritically. Here is the honest physics. Tube bass amps are heavy, expensive to buy, expensive to maintain, physically fragile and weighs solid state in modern class. D amplifiers simply are not, and the tonal case for tubes on bass is far weaker than on guitar, because low frequencies do not interact with tube saturation the same flattering way higher guitar frequencies do. Modern Class D amplifiers, meanwhile, deliver enormous clean power in a box that weighs a fraction as much, which is precisely why nearly every touring player quietly switched decades ago. The honest question, are you chasing a sound you can actually name, or a mystique borrowed from a different instrument's history? Trap number 5, the separate head and cabinet purchase made far too early. Splitting your amplifier into a head and a cabinet is a real legitimate path, more flexible, more modular, eventually more powerful, and it is also two purchases, two prices, two things that can develop separate problems, bought by players who have not yet gigged enough to know what cabinet size or configuration they actually need. This channel's rule is simple. A combo amp, one box, is the correct answer until a specific concrete situation demands otherwise. A stage too big. A cabinet you specifically want paired with a head you specifically want. Buying head and cab first, out of aspiration rather than necessity, routinely means carrying twice the weight for a sound a good combo would have delivered just as well. Trap number 6, used market edition, the dead speaker special. Amplifiers, unlike solid body instruments, contain moving parts that genuinely wear out. Speaker cones, potentiometers, and on-tube amps, the tubes themselves, and a used listing rarely mentions any of it. The test costs nothing and takes 30 seconds. Play through every input, sweep every knob through its full range, listening for scratchy static, and push the volume higher than you ever normally would for 10 honest seconds, listening for buzzing, farting, or distortion that was not there a moment ago. Silence and a clean tone at real volume is the only acceptable result. This channel's rule from our used gear episodes applies here word for word. Buy the amplifier, not the paragraph. And trap number 7, the bundle amp, sold inside a beginner instrument and amp package. We documented this trap in detail on the instrument side of this channel, and the amp inside these bundles follows the identical pattern, a token amplifier, barely functional, existing only to make the box look complete, its true cost buried inside a bundle price that looks like a bargain. The fix is the same fix. Price the components separately before you trust a bundle price, and in nearly every case, a used name brand amp bought on its own costs the same or less than the toy hiding inside the box. Now the watts math, the segment worth more than any single trap in this video. Here is the honest physics, and it will only take a minute. Human hearing does not perceive loudness in a straight line. Doubling an amplifier's wattage adds roughly 3 decibels, a difference most listeners barely register as louder at all. To genuinely sound twice as loud to the human ear takes not double the power, but roughly 10 times the power. That single fact explains why a 15-watt amp and a 30-watt amp sound almost identical in a room, while the jump from 30 watts to 300 watts is the one that actually changes your life on a stage. It also explains why speaker efficiency, how effectively a speaker converts power into actual sound, often matters more than the watt number printed on the box. A 50-watt amp paired with an efficient speaker can outvolume a weaker 200-watt amp paired with an inefficient one. And here is the detail almost nobody tells beginners, the one that should change how you shop. Underpowering a speaker is more dangerous than overpowering it, because a struggling, underpowered amplifier clips, sending harsh, speaker-damaging square waves through the cone, while a healthy amp with headroom to spare simply plays clean. Buying more watts than you strictly need, within reason, is not wasteful indulgence. It is honest insurance for your speaker's health. The one sentence to remember, watts are not a loudness dial, they are a headroom budget, and the number on the box only tells you part of the story. One more honest number before the gems, because the loud, light, cheap rule deserves a real price ladder, not just a slogan. At $50 to $80, you are in 8-inch toy territory, honestly fine for a phone-in-hand living room noodle and nothing more. At 150 to 250, you cross into genuinely gig-capable combo territory, a 10 or 12-inch speaker with real class D-power behind it. At 300 to 500, you are buying headroom and reliability rather than more raw volume, the difference a working player actually notices on a bad night. And past $1,000, you are almost always paying for boutique construction, hand-wired tube circuitry, or a cabinet system built for stages far bigger than the one you're actually playing this year. None of those tiers are wrong to buy into. The trap is buying the wrong tier for the room you are actually going to be in. And the room, not the number on the box, should always choose the amp. And now the 3 amps that actually deliver, with names and street prices, because 7 warnings deserve 3 answers. Gem number 1, the boring default this channel almost feels embarrassed recommending, because it is so obvious. The Fender Rumble series, entry models running from roughly $150 to $250. Independent reviewer after independent reviewer, forum thread after forum thread, keeps landing on the same conclusion. Real Class D power, a genuinely competent speaker for the size, light enough to carry in one hand, and a company-wide ecosystem so large that used units, spare parts, and honest reviews are never more than a search away. It is not exciting. It is correct, which is exactly the kind of purchase this channel exists to celebrate. Gem number 2, the used market answer for players on the tightest possible budget, a used PV combo, often findable for well under $100. The community description is affectionate and accurate in equal measure. Boat anchor heavy, genuinely difficult to kill, decades of units still functioning in basements and garages because PV built these things like tanks. If your budget is truly rock bottom and you can carry the weight, this is the honest answer, not the 8-inch toy from Trap 1. And gem number 3 for the player who has outgrown a first practice amp and is honestly asking whether they still need an amp at all in an apartment or a headphone-only life. A genuinely good amp modeler or headphone amp solution, the same category this channel has praised before for silent practice. Now mature enough that several independent reviewers rank specific modelers as functionally replacing a small practice combo entirely for players whose playing life is mostly solo. One practical checklist before we wrap up, because a video full of physics is only useful if you can act on it in a shop. When you are standing in front of an amp, ask it 4 questions in this order. First, the speaker. Read the size off the spec sheet before anything else, because everything downstream depends on it. Second, the watts. Now that you know they are a headroom budget, not a volume dial. Match the number to the room you actually play in, using the price ladder from this video, not to the biggest number on the shelf. Third, the weight, lifted with your own hands, not read off a spec sheet, because the amp you leave in the car, because it is too heavy to carry, is a worse amp than a lighter one you actually bring to every gig. And fourth, the used market 30-second test from Trap 6, run on every amp regardless of whether it is new or used, because even new units occasionally leave the factory with a scratchy pot or a rattling cone. 4 questions, 90 seconds, and you will walk out with a better amp than most players find after an hour of reading marketing copy. Before we wrap up, the 3 questions. Amp edition. Question 1. Can you hear the problem? An amp that sounds thin alone in a bedroom will sound thin on a stage too. Watts will not rescue a fundamentally weak speaker, and you deserve to know the difference between an underpowered amp and an honestly small one. Question 2. Real fault or sold feeling. Wattage envy is a feeling. Tube mystique, borrowed from guitar culture, is a feeling. A speaker that genuinely cannot keep up with a drummer is a fault. Question 3. Have you done the cheap things first? Before blaming an amp, check your instrument's own volume and tone controls, check your cable, and run the 30-second used amp test on anything you already own before assuming the box itself is the problem. So here is the honest verdict. The amp market sells confidence through numbers, watts, effects, features, and confidence is not the same thing as sound. A 10-inch speaker at an honest 40 watts, built by a company with a real track record, will outperform every trap in this video every single time, because the physics behind loud, light, and cheap never actually changes. Only the marketing wrapped around it does. Buy the boring amp. Learn the watts math once, and you will never be fooled by a bigger number again. And spend the money you saved on the one thing every amp in this video eventually needs: a proper cable and an honest hour learning your own tone controls, because that, more than any amplifier ever sold, is where your actual sound lives. Tell me in the comments, what was your first amp? And honestly, did it survive contact with a real band? Or did you learn trap number one the hard way like most of us did? And if you are running a used PV that refuses to die, post the age, because this channel wants to know exactly how old the oldest surviving one out there actually is. Everything is linked in the description, including the buyer's guide with the complete map of gold mines and money traps. Subscribe for honest, no-hype truth about bass gear, and I would be genuinely glad to have you along for the ride.